Okay, we're ready. We're recording.
Okay, so I do need to say that City Hall remains closed during Governor Inslee's Safe Start, Stay Healthy order, a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I will open this study session August 10th, 2020. And I am seeing all council members are here, so we'll move right on to regular business. Development services update, Doug Beagle and Scott Waller. Hit it.
Okay, good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members. It's Doug Beagle with your Development Services Director. Tonight, Associate Planner Scott Waller and I will give our presentation on the Development Services Update. So as you know, back in January of 2020, we had an organizational change and we created the Development Services Department. This included one director, one engineer, two planners, one public works specialist, two permit technicians, and one building inspector. When I went to this, I had some expectations and wanted to see how our department fared amongst other jurisdictions. So what I was looking for is, do we provide seamless permitting processes? I wanted to review our current workflow. I wanted to understand industry expectations. Albeit I've been in the industry for a while, I've been out of it for a while, so I wanted to make sure that I was tracking. And I wanted to understand what we did well and how can we improve, and how did we communicate internally as well as externally. And I also knew that we were going to be eventually going to an online payment system, and we were implementing Intergov. That's our online permitting software. And the reality that I had shortly after I started was that the staff is committed to excellence. And we have a really good staff, and everybody wants to do a good job and strives to do a good job. And the reality also was that permits typically are approved within a 4 to 6 week period once there's no more revisions are required. And what that means is that all of their documents are accurate as can be and are submitted. Now that doesn't mean that minor changes take another 4 to 6 weeks. That's not what happens. We generally take those minor changes and we incorporate those within a week or two. And then the other reality that we were facing is that we have all faced COVID-19, and we experienced new working conditions. Could we provide the same level of service and provide a seamless permitting process? And the reality was we were still working on Intergov and the implementation, because we know the benefits of this at the end of implementation at the end of this. And I just wasn't seeing anything end in sight as far as permits coming in to the city. So this slide represents a planner's day activities on the right and a permit technician's activity on the left. And this is what we've been requesting staff to do, is provide me with documentation of what they do on a daily basis. And this is typically what I get every day from staff, this level of detail of what we have going on. And this is not uncommon. Some days are less than this, but not much, but majority of the days are just like this with everybody. And what also is really important here is that I feel as a director and looking at staff is that I feel that they are more focused working from home during this COVID-19 than they are during an office environment where you have those daily distractions of what an office environment entails. But this is just a snapshot to show you how busy our department is on any given day. In 2020, we have received 391 permits to date. That's 15 of those are civil drawings, 85 mechanical and plumbing, single family residence of 35, and commercial of 51. And the miscellaneous is business license, street obstruction permits, etc. This is a breakdown of what we've had on a yearly representation of how many permits we've done on a yearly basis, plus also the total amount of money received. And as you can tell, in 2017 to 18, there was a little bit of a buildup, but in between 18 and 19, there was quite a bit. And although we're a little bit down on the number of permits this year, our dollar amount is above the trending area of $6 million to date. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Waller, and I will let him take it from there on the current projects. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, good evening, Council. I'm Scott Waller. I'm one of the associate planners here at the city, and I do a lot of the development review for projects looking to locate in Sumner. And as Doug mentioned, we've been incredibly busy here in development services, and I'll present you with a handful of projects that we're working on, and these are some of the bigger projects. They're not all of them, but they're some of the larger projects you may notice throughout town. And these projects all come at various stages of the permitting and the development process. I'll try to kind of hit on where they're at. Some of these are just in the early pre-application or kind of feasibility phase, where the city's seen a site plan and is starting to work with the developer on how to make that work. Some of these are currently in for development permits, and then some of them are under construction and getting close to being occupied or being a residence or being a commercial space. So with that, I'll jump right into the first one here, which is the Nemeth Apartments. We have some slides coming up here. This first one is located on the east end of Main Street, and as you can see that red outline there, it's located just next to the QFC development, kind of across the street from Dixie's, and it's a vacant, undeveloped lot that's currently kind of just some grass and trees in Sumner's East neighborhood plan area. YMCA is in the kind of the bottom right corner of the screen, and QFC and Waterhole is right next to it. Next slide shows you what they have proposed. This is one that's in very early phases of just kind of pre-application and early design review. They're looking to do a 94 unit kind of mixed use development that includes about 6,000 square feet of commercial along the bottom there. And so you'd have a building fairly close up to Main Street with parking along the street and kind of a plaza area there with some commercial along the bottom, and then 5 stories of, or sorry, rather 4 stories of residential space above the commercial. And then behind that would be some standalone apartment buildings. So this one's very early in the design. The plans could change quite a bit as they move through that, because this is kind of the developer just showing us, here's what we're interested in, what do we need to know to make this a reality. So stay tuned on that one. We'll see what develops there, but it's on the kind of the east end of town and be one of the bigger projects over there, and provide some residential options near the YMCA and kind of on the east side of town. Next up, we have Down Brewing. So kind of staying on that East Main Street corridor. This is a local brewer who's looking to start their first brewery, and they're wanting to do that here in downtown Sumner. And so they're looking at the space in the new main apartments. That's right next to Fred Meyer. That's that build out of mostly residential with some commercial space there on the corner of Graham and Main Street. And they're looking at a small commercial space to start a microbrewery, as well as having some indoor seating and outdoor seating. Here's a rendering of the inside. It's a relatively small space, so you can see a lot of their brew equipment's up against that back wall, or even actually overhead is what they're looking to do to maximize floor space and get the storage capacity they need for their brewing equipment and beer there. So this would just provide some activity on the east side of town and get some options down there for gathering places and some commercial development. And so we'll see where they're at, but they've submitted for a conditional use permit and a tenant improvement permit. So they're in the early phases of permitting, and we're excited to see them moving along. The next development, again, is staying with that east side of town, and this is the Windmill Gardens. They have a better chunk of that block there north of 60th along Van Tassel. And this one's just in pre-application phase. So really that's a potential developer who's looking at this site, shows the city a design option that they're looking at, and we provide them with comments to kind of help them design and help them kind of shape that product. This is what's been submitted, and it was for apartments, and they would retain the existing commercial bistro and restaurant and some of the nursery component on that corner to kind of have a commercial node there on the corner of the street, and then build out multifamily in the back. Since this pre-application, a new developer is now interested in doing senior living, and so it provides some senior housing options here in town, which definitely feels like a needed service. We have a lot of people asking about potential senior housing projects in the works. So we'll see if that senior housing development moves forward, but this one's very early phases, not a whole lot more than just a site plan, but we'll see where they go. Next project up is Seaport, and this is on the far north end of town. It's one of the last large chunks of land left in Sumner that's undeveloped, and it's north of 8th Street, kind of at the bottom of Lakeland Hills, across from the old golf course site. They have currently built out one of the buildings, kind of in the bottom left corner there, and they're under construction on another one. But this is a large industrial project that's going to be a big improvement to that area. It totals about 2 million square feet of industrial space, as well as a lot of frontage improvements and a pretty unique landscape design along 8th Street there. They, like I mentioned, they currently have building 1 constructed, building 2 is under constructed, and they're in for permits on building 3. And those last 3 buildings would likely come at in the following years, but they're in the works. They're moving along. They've been a great developer to work with. Here's a kind of a picture of what their frontage entrance would look like. So they really wanted this industrial complex to look good, and so you can kind of see their entryway has a nice, tree-lined entry promenade, a landscape strip down the middle, and they really wanted to kind of play into the Seaport namesake of kind of shipping and kind of nautical, logistics of shipping. And so they're installing these weathered steel planters in kind of a V-shaped design that kind of raise up out of the ground with a series of patterned landscaping in those to kind of create this really unique entryway feel that will be a big improvement to what's currently there. It's kind of just weeds and grass. So it'll be a good looking product. And like I said, it's gonna be about 2 million square feet of industrial space. And we don't know the users necessarily of all that space yet, but many of the big prominent companies, in Sumner, the Helly Hansen, the Amazons, REI, and those, they operate out of these type of warehouses. So we anticipate a lot more commercial uses and businesses moving into these really nice industrial complexes here. And Seaport's definitely a great example of that. The next project up is the Parker Townhomes. So we're back in kind of the East Sumner area. This is south of the QFC lot. You can see QFC just above that red box there. And this is a 14 unit townhome condominium. And these are earlier renderings here. The final design changed a bit, and they added some more architectural features and kind of made the units look a bit nicer there. But they're townhome condos. They provide a great opportunity for people to, purchase and live in a unit that might be easier to maintain and easier to acquire than a single family standalone property with a lot more site and landscaping to keep up with. So they provide a good opportunity there, and they're just about built out and really close to getting the certificate of occupancy. So it'll be good to see that project wrapped up and done. And moving on, another residential development just north of that one. So again, kind of east side of town, just behind Dixie's and the Franklin House there. This is Filbert Acres, or Richmond American Homes. It's a 52 lot subdivision, and it's going to build out that area you kind of saw covered in blue. It'll provide a lot of street connections and sidewalk connections, a lot of street trees, big improvements out to that area and to the walkability and the drivability of that section of town. What you see here is just 3 of the examples of housing options that they provide. These are 3 different house plans. They have a handful more, but these kind of captured what the look and feel of what that development will be. One thing was really great working with these developers is they provided ramblers and two-story, but they also provided some smaller scale houses like you see that fit into Sumner a bit better than some of the really large houses you see being constructed elsewhere. So it provides some smaller scale and more, great fit to Sumner's character. They're also, a lot of them are alley loaded. So you'll notice that only one of those plans has the garage on the front. And so a lot of the plans provide a great neighborhood feel, great walkability, less cars driving across, curb cuts and driveways there. So great product and great design. And they are in for permits on about 30 of their houses that have pre-sold. So they have a lot of people who are really excited to live in Sumner and call Sumner home. They have constructed most of the site work as well as some of their wetland mitigation planting up on the north end of the site. So moving on to another residential development kind of in that east end of town is the Creekside Townhomes. And they're located at the corner of Elm Street and Van Tassel here. You'll see Memory Havens kind of to the south of them, and they're kind of up against Salmon Creek there. This will provide about 30 townhomes. And one of the great things about working with this developer is you'll see this is the view from Elm Street. So they were able to front a lot of those townhomes right on Elm Street and use alley loaded options. So the view from Elm Street, you'll see, a new sidewalk, new street trees, and the front doors of houses instead of the side of buildings. So it's a great design, a big improvement out in that area, and great to see that project come in. And they'll also provide a lot of planting along Salmon Creek and restoration there. So it's been a good project to work on. They're in for permits right now and kind of in the midpoint on the permitting process, where they've done a lot and they have a bit more to go, and then we'll start to see some earthwork happening. The next project is another big one. This is one of the kind of last remaining large industrial projects here. This is Sumner Ridge, and this is located off of West Valley. And it's pretty hard to see from West Valley because it's built into the hillside, kind of on these terraced sections. And it's kind of on a hill between Sumner and Edgewood. And they're building 4 fairly large warehouse buildings that are going to build out to approximately 600,000 square feet. And they really went above and beyond on the design of these buildings. As you can see, they did a great job of kind of providing a lot of features to them. They did a whole bunch of landscaping on this site. Part of the project included reforestation of their slopes. So as part of this project, they're planting over 5,000 trees, over 14,000 shrubs, and ground cover on 14 acres of hillside. And so they're doing a lot to improve this site, and the build out looks great. They currently have buildings 1 and 2 that you see on that lower pad completed, and they're working on the permitting for the upper 2 buildings that will take place on the higher end of the site. But they're wrapping things up now. Next project then is Peterbilt, and this is a great one. They have completed design review, and they're looking to locate kind of at the south end of 136th. So that red spot you're seeing is behind the Washington Tractor, behind the existing Holiday Inn suites and the Bigfoot Java back there. And so it's interchange commercial. It's a great use for that zone. It will be the Western Peterbilt headquarters, as well as sales offices and some maintenance for Peterbilt trucking. And so it's a big company looking to move in, a big sales tax generator. And they've got a great design. They were great to work with. As you can see, they did a lot to kind of make that building. It's going to be a mix of headquarters, sales, and maintenance space look really good and blend into that area. They also have some of their kind of vintage showcase trucks that they'll have on site to kind of showcase their product as they're walking potential clients around the site. And so this is a great one, a great fit for that zone, and they're kind of beginning the permitting process. We're excited to have them. The next project in town is Sedron Industries. They're located out on East Valley Highway, and they're looking to kind of renovate and remodel the site that's currently occupied by A Advanced Septic out there at the bottom of Forest Canyon. And Sedron is an interesting project. They do a lot of wastewater treatment for septic systems, and so similar to the use that's out there today as a septic outfit, but these guys will intake septage and provide a kind of state-of-the-art cleansing process that at the end of the day pumps almost potable water back into the city's wastewater treatment system, and then has a byproduct similar to our wastewater treatment, facility that can be used for, lawns or agricultural type use. And so it's another example of redevelopment within Sumner. And you see there's their product there that they're working on. They're in design review, so the end product will change some, but they're fairly long in the permitting, and they have a little ways to go before they can get out there and start building things. Another project we have here in town is Triad Machinery. They're another one that's at the very early stages where they've submitted a pre-application, and that's that site plan you're seeing. This is a heavy machinery sales and maintenance, as well as they'll kind of rent out heavy equipment for construction, so cranes and heavy excavation equipment that they sell and rent out to construction companies. It's a interchange commercial, so they're allowed through a conditional use permit, and they've submitted for pre-app just to kind of get initial feedback and comments from the city. Part of their project that's pretty great actually is they're looking to subdivide the south end here where you see that dashed line to the bottom, and so that would leave the corner lot on 24th Street and 136th open for future development. So that would provide another user, another commercial restaurant or something else to locate at the corner and provide a great feel there at the corner of 24th and 136th. Staying up in that same 136th area is Paul's Boat RV. And this is behind Mustard Seed and kind of adjacent to 167 and accessed off 136th or Valentine there. And Paul's Boat RV is a RV sales lot, and they do some maintenance and storage of RVs. It's about a 25,000 square foot building, and they're nearing the end of their construction process. So their building is up. You can see it if you drive by, and they'll be getting certificate of occupancy here shortly once they can wrap up a few things. But they're moving along and towards the tail end of the journey. Moving back down to Main Street, here are the Parklets that you may have seen up. So the city constructed, courtesy of our own Daniel Davenport, who does a lot of the maintenance of facilities around here. He's quite the handyman, as you can see, does great work. He built these two Parklets that were installed, one in front of Hometown Charm Cafe, and the other in front of Craft 19. And these are great, especially right now in light of COVID. They provide additional seating and outdoor options for businesses to have additional space in front of their business. And so you can see the city shops crew installing a Parklet there, and the other one went in at Craft 19. And if you walk by now, they're installed, they're being used. People seem to be enjoying the additional seating option. It provides a little more activity and people out on Main Street. And moving just a little bit south is the Red Apple project. This is the old city lot. They're adjacent to City Hall. It takes up that whole block, kind of spanning Maple and Academy and Kincaid and Alder. They're in the very early phases of development. They've submitted a pre-application, and as you can see the kind of preliminary design that they're looking at, just to kind of get an initial feedback from the city here. But they're looking at a mixed use development. So you'd have some commercial nodes along the bottom, as well as residential up top, and structured parking to kind of try to hide as many of the cars as you can. So they're very early phases. We're keeping an eye out for additional permits moving in, but they're seeming to move forward, and we'll keep an eye out for those guys. Moving over to another spot in the town center plan area. This is 1228 Friar, and it's across from near the post office, just north of the library site. And it's a vacant grass field currently. And they're looking at constructing a mixed use 6-story commercial on the bottom and apartments up top. This is kind of the view looking from Friar Avenue there. You can kind of see the outdoor seating. It's kind of a plaza area along Friar Avenue and kind of wraps around that corner. It's hard to tell from the picture, but it's all brick along the bottom, big storefront windows. Great applicant to work with. They provided a really good product there. Again, structured parking. So all the parking is accessed kind of behind the building, and it's 2 stories of structured parking to accommodate all the residents. They'll also be building out a large portion of trail along Friar Avenue, as well as cutting the trail back in towards the White River. So as this project builds out, they'll build a large portion of Sumner's trail system and provide better access to the river back there. It's a pretty big project and one of the first town center ones. They are starting to wrap up their shoreline permitting process, and will be moving on to development permits. So they're right in the middle there, moving through the permitting process and getting close to having a permit in hand and out there able to do some work. One of our other industrial projects, this is another example of redevelopment, where you see a developer has moved on this is the old Pasquire panel site. If you've ever driven down Puyallup Street, you may have noticed a lot of older kind of steel pole buildings right up against the road there, and that was the old Pasquire panel site. It's been purchased by Duke Realty, and they are building just shy of a 200,000 square foot industrial building. And as you can see on that site plan on the right, the project includes a lot of frontage improvements on both Puyallup, Hubbard, and Williams, where they'll be putting a lot of street trees, curb, gutters, sidewalk, a lot of landscaping. And then on the next slide here, you'll see another example of a developer who is just great to work with, who really went above and beyond on the design of the building. And this is a concrete tilt-up warehouse, and they're installing wood paneling and upper story windows, kind of an arcade style entryway here with these Corten steel planters. So they really did a great job of taking a site that was pretty old and really having a great imagination to recreate that site into something that's going to look really great. It's a good looking product. They're under construction right now. They just started clearing out that site. So if you drive by, you'll see that it is moving along, and they're moving dirt out there. St. Andrew's Church is located off of Valley, just north of Fred Meyer. There's an existing Catholic church out at that site, and they went through permitting and have received permits. They're under construction right now to build another about a 10,000 square foot kind of assembly hall just north of the existing site, as well as adding a lot of landscaping and a lot of paving. And the next slide shows kind of a rendering of what that will look like. You can see in that picture the existing church structure to the right there, and then the new proposed kind of smaller assembly hall to the left. But it'll include a lot of paved parking on that site, as well as some landscaping along the perimeter. Another project that's under works currently is the Sumner Mixed Use, and this is located off of 410 or an Auto Lane is where they gain access. It's by the Honda dealership and the Ford dealership, just kind of on the southeast end of town. And this is a kind of a mixed use development where they have commercial space along the bottom and kind of storage up top. It's a kind of self-storage facility, a little bit of a modern design they went with, and they're under construction right now. It will be one building that has commercial, and then a handful of others behind it that are just used for self-storage. But you can see in some of those renderings, they have a nice kind of a plaza walkway and outdoor seating and some great pedestrian amenities there. So they're under construction right now and moving along on that project. Candlewood Suites. So this is back up on the north end of town. This is another one in the interchange commercial zone, right next to the existing Holiday Inn library, or sorry, not library, Holiday Inn hotel. This is an extended stay, and so they're kind of a different type of hotel and cater to a different clientele, but great looking product. They did a great job of connecting to the other developments out there. There's a new 7-Eleven and a new Starbucks, and here's the hotel right there. They're really close to getting their certificate of occupancy. So they're at the tail end of the journey and will be occupied. So if you're looking for a spot to stay, they'll be ready and rolling here pretty soon. Finally, the last project to highlight is Stepping Stones. And this is a 9-lot short plat or full plat located just behind Sumner Middle School and the Early Learning Center. So they gain access off of Galt Street, and there'll be 9 lots of single family residential. We'll kind of extend Galt Street down a little ways. And they're currently out there doing site work, kind of paving and getting that site graded out. They haven't applied for any building permits yet, so we don't have an idea of what those houses will look like. But once they get a little further along, they'll be at that phase. So those are the projects we're working on here in development services, and they're keeping us pretty busy.
Great, thanks, Scott. So I want to talk to you a little bit about code enforcement. Back in February of 2020, we went through a lien process for code enforcement, and from that came out what we're currently doing and the things that we need to work on. And obviously the first one was collaboration with all the departments within the city and our consistent messaging that we needed to, as a group, a whole city message for folks on code enforcement. And we also wanted to include different languages and translation opportunities during that messaging. The other thing that we identified was that we need to have a better file structure. And this helps all the departments, but also helps for a public records request, one place to gain that information. And we will be bringing some proposed changes to the CD committee in September of 2020 for some code enforcement updates. And this is to update and clarify and more clearly outline processes for assessing penalties, issuing stop work orders, and those type of things. Code enforcement actions, as you can see here, we had 40 in 2017, 61 in 2018, 53 in 2019, and 25 to date, year to date. And these are just the ones that we ended up, following up on with either a letter of violation or what. We're still getting, a number of different complaints that don't get to that level because staff is able to take that on early and get people to make those corrections before it gets to those places where the city is providing letters to the folks. And then during that same time in the early part of the year, we also did a lien process for our Intergov, and it was our online permitting system. And this was really challenging from a lien process because we've been doing not a lot of things online. And so we had to migrate to thinking of how do we get things to online. So, we wanted to identify current conditions and future conditions and where we wanted to be as an agency with doing online permitting. Currently, we are in electronic reviews and systems testing. And we meet with the Tyler Technology groups twice a month for training. And we hope to have this rolled out by the end of October of 2020. So that's all I have for.
Great. That's a lot of information, a lot of projects going on. Do we have any questions from council for either Scott or Doug? I see Councilmember Reed.
And Potato.
Barbara,
Okay, well, let's take Councilmember Reed first.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to thank Doug and the entire team. This was a great presentation and a great update of some of the not only development, but economic development that's happening in the city. And I really appreciate that. And I love seeing it. Especially there's the initial look. It's like, wow, that's a lot of apartments, a lot of houses. But a great example of that is that I think the number that was given is that 30 of the 52 houses are already pre-sold and they're not even built yet. So that's a great example of the need that's out there and the desire to come to Sumner. There a lot of benefits to it. It's not without some heartaches, I'm sure, but it's definitely something that's needed in the region.
Thank you, Patrick. Councilmember Potato.
Yeah, with the $6 million that is collected in the permit fees, can you tell me how is that money used? Just give me some feedback on that.
Okay, so there's a tough question in the room for me. There's system development charges in those fees. There's water sewer fees that go with that. There's stormwater fees that go to that in those fees. See, Scott, you can help me out with some other ones here. I'm trying to draw.
No, for sure. Those fees are calculated based off the size of a project, what kind of project it is, and what it's going to impact. And so high traffic generating projects typically pay more into the traffic impact fees. And then
Okay.
that money kind of goes into a pot that can be used for traffic improvement projects, if a road needs to be widened. And so it's kind of the developer's way of paying their share of impact fees for the growth that they're providing, as well as, impacts to fire department, impacts to the school. So that money kind of gets split up so that the impacted area, whether it's traffic, whether it's fire, whether it's a school, gets a portion of that money to kind of help them keep up with the demand or keep up with the wear and tear on the road from a new warehouse going in.
Okay. So does does the city make any money off of permits, or is it pretty well split out with all these different agencies in the city?
I don't know if we're allowed to make money, Councilmember
Well,
Patel.
I'm just
you know,
curious.
it all has a place, and trust me, that's where Jason chimed in here. So
Okay, yeah. And then I was curious, what does lean mean? LEAN? I'm sure it's an acronym for something. You don't know. I mean, it was on one of the slides, so I just.
yeah, it's
It's something. Okay.
I will follow up with that for you. I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, okay. I think that's all I have right now.
Does this stump the staff member?
Yeah,
Game
it
show?
certainly is. I would expect nothing less.
Okay. Councilmember Peterson.
Thanks. I mean, my understanding of lean is it's a way of looking at your business processes to make them more efficient. So
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
That's all it really is. Not all, it's obviously impactful. So my question was around like tons of activity on the east side. How can we get more activity in the town center plan area? Are you guys focused on that at all or working through that?
I know that Ryan Windish, as a community development director, is looking at focusing on other areas within the town. And it's a collaborative effort between the administration and on both of our departments, but I know that he is working on that more so than I am.
Got it. Scott, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add that, we do have the Friar Avenue project as well as the Red Apple one that are currently in the works. And so sometimes it just takes, a project to kind of get some traction, get going, to kind of act as a catalyst to that area and start to see some, the developer sees potential in that area, or they see the, what it can be. And so it'll be interesting to see once those two projects move forward, how that kind of creates more demand or what we see there as an end result.
Great, thank you.
I would also add that a lot of this is going to be redevelopment opportunities. I mean, as things turn over, that's a good opportunity. There's another project that wasn't on the list tonight, but there's also a new restaurant that is also in the review process right now on the other side of Cannery Way Bridge, which is also in the town center. So I think if you pair these residential projects, that commercial project, and then just even looking in our downtown core, while it may not be expanding, they are, several buildings that are being redeveloped right now. And I think all of that is a good sign that there's progress being made in the town center. And like Scott mentioned, hopefully it's just one or two significant projects to help tip it over the edge.
Thank you, Jason. Councilmember Newman. Councilmember Newman.
Great, thanks. So Scott started to, after Councilmember Potato asked about fees, Scott started to segue into the question that I was going to ask. I know, for instance, like with our parking requirements, that's all written into code. And so there's a formula how it's determined. What I don't have any like really experience with or not a very good understanding is our transportation impact fees. How, like, I know there's usually some sort of assessment, but I don't actually know how those get determined for each project. Could you just give broad sort of a general explanation for what that process is? please? Someone, anyone?
Yeah, and so
Someone,
those,
anyone?
those are generated by our engineer who's in development services, and his job is to look at a project, and one of his jobs is to look at a project and see how impactful it is on traffic based off the use, based off the square footage. And there's, you know, a kind of a traffic manual that he'll look at that's, you know, based off traffic studies that kind of says, you know, there's 5,000 square feet of a restaurant use that's going to generate, you know, X amount of traffic. And so here's that impact fee. So there's a bit of a formula to it that gets calculated with projects. The city does have a fee packet that we like to give to a developer so they can kind of run those numbers themselves. So hopefully there's not a sticker shock at the end, but they can kind of look those numbers over at the beginning, early phases, and kind of run that into their feasibility on a project and have a good idea of, you know, where this use, this many square feet, here's what we can kind of expect to pay.
And do we have any idea off the top of your head, and if not, just out of curiosity for finding out later, how we compare with TIF compared to, say, like Bonnie Lake, Puyallup, competitively speaking, versus like whether we're too low, too high, or on par?
You know, maybe Mike Dahlem could pop on here and answer that, because we just did a review of those fees about a year ago. And I know there's Mike right now. There you go.
Howdy, council members. Mike Dahlem, Public Works Director. Yeah, last year we completed the update to our traffic impact fees. If I remember right, we're probably in the middle or top third of in comparison to our local jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions before we move on to update on the White River restoration?
I have another question.
Okay, Barbara.
Yeah, so I live over on Thompson and Station Lane, and our neighbors said that they've heard that that area is being developed, but I just think all it is that there's, you know, it's zoned so you could develop it, but, you know, they're convinced that it's going to be, you know, apartments and a restaurant or something. So I'm just curious, is that in the pipeline at all, or is that just word on the street information?
We had a pre-app for a property on the corner of Thompson. I believe it was Station Lane. It's currently a church, if I recall correctly. It was a year, it was right after the town center was adopted, and no one really moved forward on it. So it doesn't really appear that anything's happening. We kind of provided them with some basic comments and helped them kind of understand what that would require. And haven't heard anything since, and that was a while ago. So nothing that's moving along or that is, you know, seeming to go forward.
Oh, okay. That's kind of what I thought, but just thought I'd check. All right, thank you.
Okay, great. So I see no more questions. So we'll move on to update on White River Restoration Project.
Wait a minute, Kathy, I do have a question.
Okay, hang on. We got Cindy here. Go ahead, Cindy.
I'm going to try to stump Mr. Doug Beagle. And I'm wondering, I know that this is a new department, this development services, and I know you've only had about 6 months, but how are you finding that is working out with other departments, and how is it functioning like you hoped in making making the changes in the way the city run that you were really hoping it would do?
Yeah, well, that's an easy question, Councilmember Huffstetter, because I feel that the city was strategic in creating this development services department, not for my own benefit, but for the city's needs. I feel that it was definitely something that the city needed, but also the focus on development, because that we need this development in here to keep us moving along here. I'm completely happy. I know that when I was on the private side and I was working for a developer, if we could get permits within 4 to 6 weeks, like we consistently do here, I would be ecstatic. And I know that we lead the industry in permit turnarounds with our current system, and then we're going to go to an online system. So it's going to be even better. The feedback that I've got from other department directors is they feel that it was a good move for the city to do to create this department. It provides focus for Ryan to work on economic development and community development. And so that's a benefit where, that's a big task for him to do both when he was doing that. So now we're able to take a little bit off of his plate and free him up. But I'm really happy the way it's been going.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else before we move on?
Councilmember Brown has one,
Councilmember Brown.
unless he just really has to go to the bathroom.
Miss Hayden,
Yes.
you need a pillow to sit on.
Well, no, I'm that guy on the fence.
Oh, I really enjoyed the update on development, and I really like the pictures. Thanks.
All right.
Deputy Mayor Hayden,
Yes.
if I could just add on to what Doug said and to address Councilmember Hochstetter, one of the goals of developing a separate development services department was to really set the standard of excellence for permitting, making sure that we are timely, predictable, and consistent in our responses. Permitting is one of the most visible services a city can provide. And sometimes it's the only interaction an outside member of the public has with a city, whether they live in the city or they're an outside developer. It's the first impression that people get when they interact with us, especially if they're looking to move their business here. And it is just so imperative that we do a good job. And we've always done a good job, but we have so much development activity going on. I really felt it was important to get it all under one leader, one team, so they can all work harmoniously together. Whereas before, when you're split between community development and public works, there's always competing interests. And because this is so important, putting them all together, I think, has really paid off. And we've heard good things internally and externally that have interacted with the new development services team. So I couldn't be more proud of them.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Exactly. All of that. Thank you. Let's move on to update on White River Restoration Project. Jason.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Next up is an update on our White River Restoration Project. As most of you or all of you know, it is one of the biggest projects that the city is currently working on. It's something that we've been working on in some form or fashion for about 8 years now. And I'd like to say that we are getting towards the end. And actually we are closer now than we've ever been. So tonight, Mr. Dahlem and I think Andrea and Robbie and Doug, they're all going to be providing you an update tonight of this very important project and kind of what the next steps are for this. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members. Mike Dahlem, Public Works Director. Again, tonight we're going to be talking about the White River Restoration projects. Kind of a reminder, they comprise of 4 projects: the Stewart Road Bridge, Stewart Setback, which is on the left bank or the east side of the river, south of the bridge. Then the Pacific Point Bar, right where the river makes a corner there. And then our 24th Street Setback Levee. And as a reminder, we're doing these projects to reduce flood risks to the industrial area. We're also providing mitigation for our water rights application. And we want to enhance the habitat for the listed endangered species. The presentation will include what we've got accomplished, where we're going, items that will be coming in front of council in a brief funding matrix. Robert Wright, our city environmental and sustainability specialist, will be leading us in this PowerPoint. But like Jason was saying, we have some subject matter experts on the panel here. Doug Beagle is the project manager for the project, and we have Christy Palmer and Andrea Marquez that can help answer legal questions, the agreements that we have, and some of the permitting issues. So I'll turn it over to Robbie to lead us through the PowerPoint.
Thank you, Mike, for the overview, and thank you, Deputy Mayor and members of the council. Let me pull the PowerPoint up for everybody to see. There we go. So as Mike mentioned, I'm going to give kind of a quick update on the White River Restoration Project. So you've all heard about them in some way. So I'm going to try to focus the update on where the projects are since the last update. There's quite a bit that's happened, but I'll try to keep it relatively brief. So as a reminder to start off, this is the reason we're doing these projects. Flooding is a big reason, especially with all the new development that Scott and Doug had just spoke about. These are pictures from the 2009 flood event, which we're hoping with this project we don't have to have these same pictures. So flooding is an increasing risk because the White River is losing capacity within its banks. All of the projects in some way are going to increase our ability to withstand floodwaters, reducing risk to places like our manufacturing industrial center, which currently houses over 14,000 jobs. I think the last number I heard from Doug was around 16,000. So despite the new world that we're all living in, we're still making an effort and having monthly dialogue group meetings virtually to give all of our partners updates on where we're at, as well as get feedback on different items. So the 4 projects Mike mentioned, I'm not going to read through all of these, but you can see the highlighted areas in the map to the right. The Stewart Road Bridge, the left bank Stewart Setback, the Pacific Point Bar, and the 24th Street Setback Levee. They're all at somewhat different phases, but they're still progressing. So to start off, the Stewart Road Bridge and the Stewart Setback. The Stewart Road Bridge is currently going through the environmental process by beginning NEPA, which is required for projects using federal funds. So NEPA has us take a look at any potential environmental effects from noise to stormwater. It's an important step for us to get through since it will allow us to incorporate public comments or decisions about potential mitigation into our design, which will put us on track for a 2024-25 start. Immediately below the bridge is the Stewart Setback. That's the yellow area highlighted on the map. We're working on design for this project. We've completed 30% design, and this will increase flood capacity, reducing risk to Mankey and developments off of 140. Immediately downstream of the Stewart Setback is the Pacific Point Bar. Along with the Stewart Setback, we're working on design for this project. Both projects have a need for property acquisition. Most of our acquisition has been focused here. So all of the blue parcels on this map are ones that we've already acquired. The red parcels are ones that we plan on reaching out to for future acquisition using grant funding that was accepted by the council last month. And the red parcels are ones that we will reach out to in later stages. So we've recently ranked high enough to get more funding for property acquisition. The acceptance of those funds should be coming to you all later this year. So both the design contracts for Pacific Point Bar and Stewart Setback, they will be coming to the council to take the design from 30 to 90%. Later this year for that. So the final project, which is the largest and the one we've been making the most progress on, is the 170-acre 24th Street Left Bank project. So I mentioned we were still having monthly dialogue group meetings. For this project, we're also meeting with BNSF and Cascade bi-monthly to work towards our core permit application. So we're currently finalizing a lot of the documents needed for that, and we're working on arranging another meeting with the Corps. At the same time as the previous projects, we'll also be bringing this to amend the contract to take the design from 60%, where we're currently at, to final design. In addition to the permitting meetings with BNSF and Cascade, we're working to try and finalize agreements between us and Cascade for our water right mitigation, taking a tail race from its current ditch-like state to more of a natural stream. We're working on purchasing water rights from Cascade. Negotiations and agreement for this are ongoing. So for on the ground work, back in December, we brought to you information about this pilot revetment project that we were going to have a contractor build out at the golf course. That pilot was completed back in March, and it helped to inform and optimize our project design. It doesn't look like much from the photo, but these logs are much larger than they would usually be in a structure. Some of them are 40-foot long. So completing it without issues was a big accomplishment. The testing and showing the structure actually helped us with site tours to granting agencies. And that may have helped give us an extra leg up as we placed third in the state for our request of $14.6 million. So this is the funding list that will go to the legislature, and they will use it when determining the next state biennial budget. So we're going to be working with both our lobbyists and the Puget Sound Partnership to continue educating the legislature about the importance of this project, as well as pushing for funding of this grant program at least a $25 million level. If they fund at that level, our project will be fully funded. So that's most of what's new with the projects since the last update. So here's all the things that are coming up within the next 2 years. So as I mentioned, we're planning to be working to complete our project design, focusing the golf course side. We're also working on completing all of our agreements this year between BNSF and Cascade Water Alliance. The BNSF agreement should be done prior to us submitting our core permit applications, and the Cascade Water agreements relating to tail race should be done by the end of the year. Next year, we can start working on our state and local permits, which is going to put us in the position we need to have everything ready for construction. Once the permits are received, we can close on the sale of our property to BNSF. Permits and funding allowing, the soonest we could start construction would be summer 2021. Construction is going to start with relocation of our utilities, the water, sewer, gas, and power, followed by BNSF's excavation, and we'll be right behind them doing our restoration work. So one thing I haven't spoken about is the sale of the North Golf Course property to the developer principal. The timing of the sale depends on a few different factors. The two main ones are funding and permitting. So if conditions of the permit will allow it, the developer may be able to work simultaneously with the rest of the construction. There is a chance that the permit could require mitigation for the golf course ponds to be in place prior to the development starting. In that case, the principal project won't be able to start until after the restoration project gets that mitigation in place. So as far as funding goes, with the $14.6 million I mentioned, if we are awarded that funding, that should make our project fully funded based off the attached chart. We're going to be pushing, like I said, to try to get that program funded to allow us to do everything. And additionally, part of the proceeds of the golf course could be used to help make this wheel full. Those were all of the updates I had. It was fairly brief, so if there's any questions, feel free to ask. As mentioned, we have the whole slew of subject matter experts here.
Robbie, if I could just clarify one thing real quick.
Yes.
This wheel that is on the screen right now, this is for the 24th Street.
Yes, thank you. This is for construction of the 24th Street project. We don't have a funding wheel that shows all of them combined. This is, I guess, the closest to being ready to build.
Correct. Just wanted to make sure that council understood that it doesn't include the Stewart Road Bridge area or the Pacific Point Bar.
Kathy? Could I ask how, maybe you said, but what is the total cost? You said something about 25 million, is that? But your pie chart looks like it's a lot higher than that.
Yeah, so 25 million would be the level the state legislature would have to fund the Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration Grant Program in order for our project to be fully above the funding line. The total project cost for construction of that is estimated at 42 million.
42, okay.
Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just had a question. This may be a Cassandra question for later. So it had the assumption of 6 million out of the golf course sale applying toward that project. What is that going to be? What is that going to leave out of the proceeds from this?
I'll defer that question to Andrea since you just unmuted.
I was just going to say that the total sale price is approximately $40 million. So depending on how much is attributed to this project and ultimately allocated by council, that will give you a good idea of what the difference will be.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get an idea of is how much was going to be available out of that money toward capital improvements and things, and then also other projects. So it's something I'm sure we'll be discussing during budget time.
Do we have any other questions? Cindy.
Yes, I was wondering if someone could explain to me how those logs or those slashing or whatever they call it, I'm assuming those are going to be underwater. Can you tell me what work they do and what they're accomplishing?
Yeah, I can do that. So part of the project on the golf course and north of the tail race, we are building a side channel off of the main river. And outside of that channel will be plenty of trees and different things we need to have established. The wood, one function it's going to do is to make sure that when we move the river over that direction, it's not going to free flow and kind of take over the whole site. So it's going to keep it stable in its channel, give time for all the trees to grow. It also provides habitat for fish. It gives them a place to hide under so they can avoid predators like birds or bigger fish. So it serves both a stability and a habitat function.
Do they eventually rot away?
It'll be a fairly long time before they do. The wood that's submerged should last. I mean, I'm not an expert on how long the wood will last when it's wet, but 100 years for some of it, if it's fully submerged, isn't out of the question.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right. Nice presentation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well, move on to the city administrator report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just two things. First off, we want to remind everybody that there is free COVID-19 testing. That's going to be at Sumner High School this Saturday from 9:30 to 3:30. You can either drive there or walk up and get tested for free. And obviously the county's encouraging anybody that is interested or feels that they're at risk, go get tested and find out. Second thing I wanted to talk to you about is Association of Washington Cities, in conjunction with the National League of Cities, is holding a two-part training. It's called REAL, all capital letters, and then Advancing Racial Equity in Local Government. This is a two-part series. I'll be sending you an email later tonight with the information on how to register for that. It was filling up quickly, so there may not be seats available anymore. The good news is they will be recording those, and I'll be able to send those out to council when the recordings are available. If you have a strong desire to attend in person as it's live, let me know, and we can probably do a screen share through Zoom so you can participate. They are in the middle of the day, so it may not be conducive to everybody's schedule. That's all I have.
All right. So do we have any calendar issues? Anybody can't make a meeting or need to change? Seeing none? Oh, we do have. Melanie, do you?
Mentioned that PCRC was canceled for August, so there's no meeting this month.
Okay. Melanie?
I won't be here for the August 24th meeting.
Okay. That's CD, right?
It's a,
Oh, the
it's a
council meeting? Oh,
Yeah, it's a
okay.
study session.
Okay, great. Thank you. That it? Well, good job, guys. I guess meeting is adjourned.
Goodbye.
See you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.